Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Zach Lawley. I'm a project manager here at 5 Words Media. I'm here with an Allen and Heath SQ5. So now that we've built our input list, we now need to take that and dump it into the console. Now I'm basically going to go input by input and label all of my inputs, and then I'll go back and do my outputs. Here's how you do that. So my first input here on my input list is kick in. I'm going to select input 1, and I'll select here at the top, and I'll get this inner channel name here. And I'm basically I like to use all caps. You just hold down the caps to get all caps, and you can spell kick in. I spell it K-I-K-I-N because the Allen and Heath SQs only allow you to have 6 characters in your name. And I want to get that full kick in so I know it's not in or out no matter what. And so it'll be kick in, and then if you hit this rainbow, you can actually assign a color to it. So I like my drums to be all red, my guitars to be all yellow, my keys to be all green, my tracks to be all purplish, my effects to be light blue, and my vocals to be dark blue. And so if I hit apply, you'll see that it has now labeled my first input kick in, and it's labeled the color red. If I go to my second input, I can now do it is snare T, which is snare top, S-N-R-T. And I can assign my color and hit apply. I'm going to go through and do the rest of the console now, and I'll catch you back when I'm done. I really like to make things a stereo channel where I can. That takes your fader count down, especially on the smaller SQ5. It's just less things you have to deal with. And so for my overheads, what I'm going to do to the left is typically what I'm going to do to the right, so I might as well make that a stereo channel. If I select my overhead left and I go into my processing, you'll see that it's a mono channel. There's only one fader. There's only one input selection. And what I can do is I can hit setup, I can hit mixer config, and I know that my overheads are channels 7 and 8. So I can take 7 and 8 and make that a stereo channel. Then what happens is my overhead right goes away. If I go back to my overhead left, you'll see that it's now a stereo channel and now has 2 inputs on the source select. Typically for me, I don't like to do that with guitars because I like to do something different with the left than I do the right. And so what I'll do is I'll actually gang them together. So that way some things are connected, but some things aren't. And so you can do that by going back to setup and then going into ganging, and you have 8 different options for ganging inputs together. So I'm going to select guitar 1 left and guitar 1 right. Now there's certain things here that I want and certain things that I don't. Everything that I hit down here will be linked together, so what I do to the left is what I do to the right. I'll definitely not want the trim. I definitely don't want the delay. The filter I'll probably do. The fader I definitely don't want. The gate, probably not. But the mute, I definitely want those mutes connected. Same thing with my direct out and my routing. I'll want all of those connected. My fader 10, which is my guitar 1 left, and my fader 11, which is my guitar 1 right. The filter, the mute, the routing, and the direct out are all connected. The rest are not. And so when I hit apply, you'll see that when I go and I add a high pass filter on guitar 1 left, it also adds that same high pass filter to guitar 1 right. Now I can connect the faders and I can make that a linked group, but I like to do different things with that as well. That's an important thing to note as you're building your input lists. It's one way you can keep your channel count down on your console by ganging things together or linking them together in stereo. Now an important thing to note here is I've linked my guitar 1 left and my guitar 1 right together. And I've linked them here, I've ganged them here under the ganging page under setup. Now if I wanted to go and gang guitar 2, I would need to select number 2 to make another gang. I have 8 gangs available, and so if I put them in one, guitar 2 left and right is going to be linked with guitar 1 left and right. So now that I've selected 2, I can drag and drop guitar 2 in there. I can select filter, my mute, my routing, and my direct out, and I can hit apply. We'll gang those together separately from my guitar 1. Now my synth is a stereo channel, so I'm going to go to setup. I'm going to go to mixer config, and I know that I can hit view here and see that it's input 15 and 16, or I can look on my input list and see that it's 15 and 16, and I can make that a stereo. Here we go. If I go back, you can see that it's now a stereo channel for my synth. Now I can do the same thing for my keys. So I'll label input 17 keys, and I'll color it green like it already is, and I'll apply it. Now if I go to setup, and again 17, 18, I'll make that stereo, and there you go. When you make 17 stereo, 18 automatically goes away. Now I've gone through completely and I've labeled all my inputs. I have my drums, my stereo overhead, so my left and my right are connected. I've got my bass and guitars. Again, these are stereo gang together, but they're not as one fader because I want to be able to control those faders individually. I've got a stereo synth channel, stereo keys channel, a stereo tracks channel, some mono click, a mono background vocal, and a mono tracked percussion. I've got 2 background vocalists and a lead vocalist. I've got a bunch of extra inputs here that I'm not using, and I'll show you how to get rid of those here in a second. Now, one of the last things we need to do is we need to set up our outputs. And so if we come down here, you'll see our main left, right, as well as our 3 matrices. This console gives you 3 matrices, but they can be either mono or stereo matrices. So if I go under setup and go to mix stereo, I can see that my 3 matrices are already set to stereo. Now I'm going to set matrix 1 up as my main left, right. I'm just going to use LR and I'm going to color it red so that way I know where it is. I'm going to set matrix 2 up as my subs, and I'll color that, let's just say green. And then I'm going to set matrix 3 up as my broadcast. I'm just going to call it bcast for short. And there you go. Now I need to make sure that I'm sending signal from my left, right to these matrices. And the way that I do that is I hit this routing page, and then I can select one of these, and you can see the main left, right to the left, right matrix. I got to grab that and turn it up to 0. I typically just start them all at 0. I can pull them back or pull them up or down if needed. Now the reason why I do this is most people just take their main left, right out of the console and push it to their speakers. And that's fine, it works. But doing it through a matrix gives you another layer of EQ, compression, limiting. Also, the EQ you put on your main left, right then is the main EQ going to your broadcast, to your subs, to everything else. Doing it this way, it lets you EQ it within the matrix, and it doesn't affect the other matrices or the other sends. Also here, we'll want to label our outputs and our groups. I'm not using any auxes or groups, but if you're mixing monitors from this desk, or you're using like an ME500 and you need to group like your drums or your tracks together to send to those, this is where you would label those to send it out. I'm going to go ahead and skip this step just because I'm not doing it for this demonstration, but you can label these auxes worship leader, drummer, bass player, so on and so forth, so that way they coincide with who's getting that mix. Now there's 2 more things I want to label before we're done with labeling. I want to label my FX sends. I use 4 FX sends. Typically you have 8 available here, but I'm going to just use 4 of them. And the first one's going to be a drum verb. So I will again hold all caps, drum verb. And I'm going to make that one red just because my drums are red. And then the next one, I'm going to call it a band verb. I guess band V is perfect. I'm going to make it yellow because my guitars are yellow. Typically what's going to that is keys or a lot of acoustic. The last one will be vocal verb. So I'll call it VOXV, and then vocal delay. And I will just call that V delay, or as much as I can get on there. And those will be blue because my vocals are blue. So these are my sends to my effects, and we'll talk about effects later on. And then the very last thing that you're going to want to label is your DCAs. Now, I'll have a video on what a DCA is, but I'm going to label my DCAs the way I like to have them laid out. You can do them however fits you. This is typically how I do it, and this is what I found works for me and our volunteers at the church that I'm. So my first DCA will be drums. I'll leave that one red. The next one will be bass. Make that one yellow. The third DCA will be guitars. I'll make that one yellow as well. My fourth one will be keys. I'll make that green because my keys are green. The fifth one will be tracks. I'll make that this purple color. Oh, I didn't hit apply. See, that's what happens when you don't hit apply. And then my sixth one, I'm going to label as band, and I'll explain that later on, but I'll just make that white. And then 7 will be vocals. I'll just call it VOX. And then my last one will be my effects, EFX. I'll make that kind of this light blue. Now that you've got all of the inputs and all of the outputs labeled on the console, you're ready to start patching.